This week, we hop back on the bike as we work our way through Trials Fusion. We chat to Mike McFarland, voice actor and ADR director of Attack on Titan. And Mel tries to keep her limbs under control in Octodad, Dadliest Catch. This is Player Attack. Hi, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this week one of gaming's greatest urban myths was revealed to be 100% true. A documentary team visited a New Mexico landfill with a couple of bulldozers and uncovered hundreds of copies of E.T. game cartridges, reportedly buried there by publisher Atari back in 1983. Several dozen people watched the fateful dig, braving less than enjoyable conditions and 85-mile-per-hour winds, as filmmaker Zach Penn uncovered not only E.T. boxes and cartridge, but plenty of other Atari games as well, including Defender, Warlords, and Centipede. For the past 30 years, the extraterrestrials' fate was considered to be just part of local folklore, but E.T.'s resounding failure was blamed for the early 80s collapse of the video games industry, something it didn't recover from for several years. Now though, the worst game in the world has been rediscovered and the documentary should be released later this year. In other news, BlizzCon 2014 has been announced. The somewhat annual celebration of all things Warcraft, Starcraft and Diablo is descending on the Anaheim Convention Center in California on November 7 and 8. Blizzard CEO and co-founder Mike McFarland explains the team can't wait to celebrate and share what they've been working on, so we've got our fingers firmly crossed for a little light shed on Overwatch, maybe some news about StarCraft 2, and some long overdue updates on Project Titan. Tickets are set to go on sale in two batches, one on May 7th at 7 p.m. Pacific and one on May 10th at 10 a.m. Pacific. To find out when that is in your time zone, head to playerattack.com. It was actually a good week for big reveals too. Activision has announced the next Skylanders outing. Trap Team is headed to shelves in October and brings with it the ability to reverse the magic of bringing toys to life.
Leo, the trap! Put it in the portal!
Wait! What's happening?
Hey! How'd I get in here? Put me back in. I'll be good, I swear!
It's okay, Leo. He's one of us now.
It feels good to be good.
Now that's a good dog!
Something else happening in October is Dragon Age Inquisition. The third game in BioWare's fantasy RPG series puts you in the role of an Inquisitor, tasked with uncovering the truth behind the massive, mysterious breach in the sky that threatens the beautiful world of Thetis. The latest in the Grid series is also on its way this year, with Grid Autosport headed to PC, Xbox 360 and PS3 by the end of June. Grid 2 divided the community when it was released last year, so Grid Autosport is a direct response to fan feedback. It promises more traditional action, authentic motorsport racing and endurance action, as well as drifting and supercars. Expect open wheel cars ranging from F3 to IndyCar, and a return to being all about the race. Still more driving fun is on the way when Project Cars arrives in November. An amazing collection of in-game footage showed off the most authentic, beautiful, intense and technically advanced racer of all time, heading to PC, SteamOS, Xbox One, PS4 and Wii U, and supporting both Oculus Rift and Project Morpheus. And while we don't yet have a release date, EA has confirmed that yes, The Sims 4 will be shown off as part of its E3 showcase in June this year, and that's the first time we've really heard anything from the game since last year. Another game we haven't heard much from in 2013 is Mad Max. While I would love to share with you some good news from the Wasteland, Avalanche Studios has instead slipped us a little note saying the open world title has been delayed until sometime next year. So, on to something completely different. We would still really like to believe that Human Head Studios is secretly working on Prey 2, despite not hearing anything positive about the project since 2012. That said, at least some of the developers are working on something new, a minimalist third-person arena shooter named Minimum. This isn't the first time we've heard of Minimum. It was first revealed by Aliens Colonial Marines developer Timegate Studios back before it closed mid-last year. It's a 5 vs 5 third-person shooter drawing inspiration from all over the place. There's some MOBA-style creep farming as well as blueprints and resources to gather and build into weapons and armour. Plus, as is becoming trendy, there is a giant mech for each team to look after. If you want more, Minimum is set to hit Steam Early Access real soon now, thanks to Human Head and Atari. In other news, we're hearing rumours that Beyond Two Souls is potentially headed to PlayStation 4, with a developer's portfolio showing how a director's cut of the game works with a DualShock 4 controller. We're also promised extra scenes that have been cut from the PS3 retail version, including a glimpse of Jodie as a baby. Quantic Dream CEO Guillaume de Fondormière has kept quiet on the topic, preferring to retweet requests for a PS4 re-release rather than actually answering them. For more information on any of these stories, or to keep up to date with the latest gaming news, head to playerattack.com. But for now, stick around, got plenty more still to come.
Experience historical battles like never before in World of Tanks. Play for free at tanks.asia.
One of the most important things to know about Trials Fusion is one of the most easy to spot. Yes, this pretty much is more of the same. If you've never played a Trials game, this might sound like a negative, but if you're a fan, you'll know you're in for a treat. The Trials series has been around in one form or another for nearly 15 years, starting out as a simple Java-based affair. Now it's escaped the restraints of the browser and raced onto consoles, both Xbox 360 and Xbox One, as well as PC and PS4 for the first time. So let's start with the basics. The team at Redlinks developed a winning formula with Trials HD for Xbox 360, and the core gameplay hasn't changed much since then. Trials Fusion is a game about moving from left to right. It's as simple as that, to begin with, anyway. Pick your bike, whether it has 2 wheels or 4, and start your race. This can be a solo affair where you're racing against the clock, or your friends can join in, with up to 4 players on screen at once. Now, if you're familiar with Trials, you'll know what comes next. A collection of tracks built to ridiculously exacting standards where the briefest of delays or the most accidental button mispress will result in your racer missing a landing, losing momentum, or, of course, plunging off the track to their certain doom. But it's okay, because they'll just regenerate at a checkpoint. Trials Fusion looks great. Like in previous titles, you're dropped into a fully 3D world, but you can only move forward and backward. There is no need to actually steer here, beyond shifting your rider's weight just enough to pop your bike up on one wheel or to perform a spectacular mid-air somersault. The game's been given a brighter coat of paint than the earlier games, and while it might not be taking full advantage of the next-gen consoles in terms of complicated graphics, it's certainly putting physics processors through their paces. Each of the bikes has its own weight to it, so each run-through will feel different depending on which one you choose. In fact, some levels may only be perfected using one specific bike. And perfection really is what you're striving for here. There is a 4-medal system for each trial, FMX, or skill game, with each medal earning you points that can be used to buy new paint jobs and other cosmetic customizations. Essentially, you'll get bronze just for finishing, virtually regardless of how long you took or how many mistakes you've made. You'll get silver for finishing with a better time or fewer slips, and obviously, gold rewards both speed and accuracy. Then, my friends, there is platinum, which is only awarded if you have blazed through the level at premium efficiency and made 0 errors along the way. Getting a platinum medal in Trials Fusion isn't necessarily a case of just going fast along the most obvious route. Certain levels are dotted with shortcuts and secret tracks, which might bypass checkpoints, but which will improve your track time like you would not believe. It's worth looking closely at every single level to find the hidden bits. There are 40 standard tracks in the game, which get more and more tricky as you move along, to the point where the later levels of the game focus quite a bit on the technical side of things, sacrificing some of the more fun elements. There is a seriously big leap in difficulty between the later medium levels and the first hard ones, so don't be too discouraged if you go from achieving all golds to suddenly struggling to perfectly time a trick. Oh, and the tricks are something that have changed in Trials Fusion. The new FMX system harks back to the series' roots as being a pure physics-based puzzler rather than continuing down a path that saw it becoming a more arcadey button masher. The new system instead puts the emphasis back onto skill and timing, sometimes frustratingly so, but it's also that much more rewarding when you pull off a perfect move. Of course, I mean rewarding in the self-esteem sense, not in the scoring point sense, although you'll do that too. Additional prizes are rewarded as you master the FMX trick system, which is a nice way of doing it because you don't want to be pulling off these complicated, time-consuming moves in the middle of a speedrun. If all of this still isn't good enough for you, there's a track creator too. It's not the most user-friendly experience and you won't necessarily start out creating award-winning tracks, but it's not a bad little inclusion if you have some creativity and a rough idea of how gravity works. Like the other Trials games, Fusion fits into a weird little niche that it's carved for itself. It might not be the best game in the series, nor the most accessible, but all the elements are there. It's part racer, part puzzler, part physics experiment, and a whole lot of fun. Since launch, Ubisoft has experienced more than a few teething issues with Trials Fusion servers, which has been impacting on the ability to save files and climb leaderboards. For a game that relies so heavily on individual performances, this has obviously impacted on the number of people playing the game. But once these are sorted out, we're hoping more of you hop back on the bike. Hi, I'm Jessica Citizen from Player Attack. I'm here with Mike McFarland, a voice actor extraordinaire. To people who might not recognise your face so much, can you give us a really quick rundown of what you've been in?
Voice-wise, I'm the voice of Master Roshi in the Dragon Ball franchise, including Dragon Ball Z. I'm Havik in Full Metal Alchemist. I'm Goemon in Lupin III, Hyuga in the Evangelion Rebuild films.
What is the most recent project that you have completed that people can hear you in?
The most recent project that I've completed, that I can talk about, that people can hear me in, is the voice of Jean Kirstein in Attack on Titan.
So to people who might not be familiar with it, which I assume isn't many, but give us a recap.
Attack on Titan is a really awesome show. It's more or less a nice combination tonally of the reboot of Battlestar Galactica plus Game of Thrones plus Walking Dead made into an anime. The little bit of humanity, it's either like a super futuristic world or a parallel universe world. It's a lot like Earth, where giants who are called Titans have taken over the planet, and the little bit of humanity that's left, which is about 1.25 million people, have walled themselves up in a region that pretty much resembles Germany. And the show is about them fighting to maintain their lives and to figure out where the Titans come from and how to beat them, and other things happen along the way. But there's lots of death in it, so much like Game of Thrones, don't latch on to any one character because there's a really good chance they could die.
So what's it like playing such diverse roles? I mean, is it challenging to try and find different voices to suit all of the different roles you play?
It's a lot of fun. I do, in fact, try to find different voices. Obviously, at some point, because of where the sound is coming from, there's parts that are just going to blend in and bleed over, and you're going to take this element of that voice and this element of that voice, and you can kind of tell that it's the same guy. It's more about portraying a character than it is about completely tricking out the voice and making it completely different. But those two things combined, the process is a lot of fun.
One other place that people might be able to hear you is in a video game or two. You're in Borderlands 2, I hear.
Yes, I am in Borderlands 2 a few times in Borderlands 2.
Who are you in Borderlands 2?
I believe there is a section where they pay homage to the Ninja Turtles, and I believe I am the Splinter-ish type character. It's called Rat Commander, Rat Leader. I'm also a bunch of various guys who get shot in the face, and I'm also a rude, snowman, I believe, in some of the DLC.
So how many different ways can you say, ow, ow, I've been shot in the face?
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised because there's how many ways and how many levels of loudness and how many ways, that you're going out. Are you being shot? Are you being shot while on fire? Are you being shot while on fire and shoved off a cliff? Are you being shot while on fire, shoved off a cliff, being strangled by snakes? Like, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you could go out.
So that would obviously make gaming voice acting very different to, say, anime voice acting, where particularly when you're doing a dub from something else, you've got it pretty much spelled out. This is what's going to happen.
Well, it's spelled out for you in the way that, the animation is complete, but it's still an interesting challenge in and of itself, being that you have to match that. So if the character makes a bunch of weird mouth shapes and finishes one certain way or finishes clenched teeth where it doesn't even seem like that's the way that it would end, you have to find some way to make that sound natural because it's already drawn that way. We're not going to change it. The flip with doing video game voice acting is you have the freedom to change it up, but how many different ways can you, have your head blown off? How many different ways can that sound? And that's the challenge, is to keep finding new ways so that every time the player goes through, it's not the it's the same sound over and over again because nobody likes that.
What's been your favorite thing to work on in your entire career?
I can't pick. I'll just pick a few because there's not any one. I love mostly it's being an ADR director. And with that, the two whole set of films that I've worked on, Summer Wars and Wolf Children. I love both of those. All of the Full Metal Alchemist franchise has been fun. Attack on Titan was amazing. The rebuild of Evangelion films, those are great. Mushishi was great. Eden of the East. One Piece, that show's really, really long and really, really fun. I've just been really, really fortunate to work on a lot of awesome things where it's not necessarily the highlights, mixed in with a bunch of other stuff that's okay. Most everything I work on is amazing, and I'm so lucky for that.
Experience historical battles like never before in World of Tanks. Play for free at tanks.asia.
I have a surprise for the whole family. A free trip to the aquarium!
There comes a time in an octopus's life where he just has to scramble out of the ocean, find himself a bride, and settle down into suburban bliss. We can't roam the depths of the ocean like teenagers forever after all. There are certain rules that apply in this situation, however. 1, obviously, never let your human family find out that you're a creature from the deep blue briny sea. 2, watch out for that crazy chef who wants to unmask you and potentially cook you. These are the very real dangers faced by the titular character of Young Horse's second Octodad game, Dadliest Catch. The game hit PC, Macs and Linux earlier this year and has finally come to consoles exclusively on Sony's PS4. Octodad is one of the most creative, unusual and fun titles released on any next-gen platform to date. It's an example of just how much can still be done to craft original scenarios in gaming as we move into this next generation. At the outset of the game, we join Octodad on his wedding day to the delightful Scarlet. Scarlet is a lovable sort, but may need to get her eyes checked considering that she's about to marry an octopus. Then again, nobody in Octodad's vibrant and ridiculous world seems to notice his mild-mannered dude in a 3-piece suit is a walking calamari. That is except for science dudes, but that's because science dudes know everything. Simple acts like getting into your tuxedo, shambling up the aisle and placing the ring on your future wife's finger are all near impossible and simply hilarious to watch. Things get even funnier in the next area. Set many years later when Octodad is doing mundane household tasks like making coffee, getting a drink for his daughter and making dinner for the family. These everyday odd jobs might seem simple, but given the game's bizarre control scheme, they're sure to raise a chuckle, not only for the player but also anyone else who's fortunate enough to be watching. So how do the controls work? Well, it's easy. They don't. Okay, just kidding, they work, but they're just as bizarre as the rest of this fun-filled little experience. Holding the L or R triggers raises each of Octodad's legs. Releasing the trigger suctions his tentacle onto the nearest available surface. You can move Octodad's arm vertically with the right stick and in all other directions with the left stick while using R1 buttons to grab objects. It's a cumbersome way to get around, but then again, that's kind of the whole point. You are an octopus pretending to be a human after all. The game excels when it presents the player with simple mundane tasks, as control and position are not important. Where Dadliest Catch stumbles most is where it tries too hard to be a game. There are several annoying stealth sections, which have been drastically improved since their PC release, and some really frustrating encounters with Chef Fujimoto, the main bad guy. It's like the developers forgot that they had made such an unwieldy game in some of these sections, with the finale being the worst hit. Still, it's hard to stay mad at a game as enjoyable and silly as Octodad. Few games feel as truly fresh and creatively free, particularly in the console space. It might only ring in a few hours playtime, but there's so much replayability on offer that for the measly asking price, it's an absolute steal. It's a game you'll want to play time and time again, if only to cheer yourself up after a long day at the office or to collect all the hidden neckties. It's pure escapism and it deserves your attention. We haven't even touched on the co-op mode, which sees someone else controlling Octodad's other leg. There are a whole lot of questions left unanswered when the credits roll, like, how has Scarlett not realised her husband is not human? Where exactly did those two kids come from? Is this the sequel to that really weird Japanese anime I saw one night on cable TV? Whatever the questions remain, the answers are irrelevant. The only question you need to be concerned with, should I buy Octodad? Happily, the answer is a resounding yes.
And that's about it for this edition of Player Attack. Thanks for watching. Next week, we explore Ubisoft Montreal's take on the JRPG, Child of Light, as well as jumping into Here Be Monsters, a casual social game that's just launched on iPad. Plus, Johnny lives out a childhood dream and chats with Tim Rose, the puppeteer behind Admiral Akbar from Return of the Jedi, and TikTok from Return to Oz. In the meantime, you can catch us on playerattack.com or on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. And if you've got something you want to say, send us an email, mailbox@playerattack.com, or just hop on our forums. Till next week, I'm Jessica Citizen and this is Player Attack.